Alright guys, so I drove the car last week and for the first time, and it just felt like the rear end was all loosey-goosey, like it was going back and forth, and it really wasn't confidence inspiring. So I think I need some new control arms or bushings or something. The other thing I noticed when I backed the car out of the driveway, I had a big oil spot from this rear shock. So probably need to change the shocks too.
So I'm just on my way back home from picking up some Mustang parts, control arms, and it's snowing in the middle of April. What the hell?
Okay, so I got some new control arms. These are, I think they're like SR Performance, the American Muscle House brand. Price is right, you know my budget, right? 50 bucks, perfect. I also got some new KYBs, Excel G. I think these are just like stock replacements. So we'll go ahead and swap those out today. And then I also got the Maximum Motorsport axle bushing tool. So I got some new axle bushings. We'll put those in as well. So hopefully that'll give like the whole rear end a complete refresh.
All right, something else I did in the last couple weeks, forgot to film it, was I changed these seatbelt retractors.
Come in next week when we fix this. Floppy.
Look at this, they're working now.
Alright, I don't know about you guys, but I'll tell you what, when I have to jack the car up and put it on jack stands, it always takes me forever. So, all I did was I jacked the front up there and put some blocks under the wheels. But the rear, since we can't jack up from the axle, because we're going to need to lower it all the way to get the control arms out, I had to put them on jack stands here, so I don't know, just a pain. Anyway, now that the car's up, we can get the tires off, and then we'll do, for control arms, we'll do one side at a time, or one control arm at a time, so we're not leaving the axle just floating in there without any support. Alright, and remember I told you that rear shock needs to be replaced? Oh yeah, look at that leakage. It's even dripping on the floor here. So anyway, get the tire off. We're going to remove the quad shock and then start removing the sway bar. Alright, so I don't know if you guys remember from my last videos, but this one here, this little nut here is actually tack welded onto this bracket. Don't make the same mistake I did. This one's now broken loose, but it's only a bolt here, so just remove the bolt. So we got the sway bar undone, both sides, slammed back here now. What we're going to do is disconnect this shock so we can drop the axle even further, take the spring out, and then we can start unbolting the lower control arm. Stay tuned. So before you do this, just make sure you put a jack on your pumpkin so that when you take the tension off of your shock, your axle doesn't just fall out. Because at that point, your spring can be pushing against your axle down. And anyway, just have your jack stand there so you can lower it controlled. All right, there you go. So we lowered it just a couple inches here. Now our spring's nice and loose. We could take that out, and what we'll do is we'll replace this shock while we're at it. Perfect time. So we'll go on top. And right in here, usually you have a cover here. So right in here, you take the cover off, and you can see right down in there. Oh, I don't know if you can see it. Right down in there, there's a bolt right here. Anyway, just take the nut off of that, and then the shock will slide right out. All right, so here are the two shocks side by side. They're the same length and everything, but one thing I really noticed was that this KYB, it's a lot harder to push down than this. I think it's a stock one. This one's easy to push down, so that might have been contributing to my loose feeling rear end. So all I did was I took these bushings here that were on the original, and I'm going to transfer them over to the new one. Okay, I changed my mind. I'm going to use the new bushings that come with the shock. I don't know if you can see that, but that is steam coming off my impact socket. That lower control arm bolt right down there, right down here. A little bit of a pain. Can't wait to see this. Yeah, that thing's on there pretty tight. All right, one down. Look at all this. Look at all this stuff, all the rust coming out of this thing. Just out of the bushing. And look how wore down the bolt is. So I'm gonna have to order some new bolts here. All right, so I got the passenger side lower control arm out. You can see this bushing here, a little bit beat up, and they've been sitting around. They're all cracked and dry rotted and stuff. So they're really not as bad as I expected it would be. But anyway, I'm expecting the upper axle ones really to be the worst. So either way, we'll change it out. We'll put the new the new lower control arm with the poly bushings in there, and see how she goes. All right, so just taking a look at the torque boxes here before we put it all back together. There's really no rips or tears or anything. It actually looks pretty good in here. So, all right, so you guys saw how bad that first bolt was, right? In the lower. What we'll do is we'll put some never sees on the bolt, and hopefully it'll buy us a bit more time. All right, guys, a couple things I'm noticing here. Look at that gap. It looks like it's not, the whole control arm is not on the right angle. And then, I don't know if you can see this one, yeah. Same thing over here. Anyway. Okay, so I got the lower control arm back in. So what I did is I tightened up the frame side, the chassis side, and then this other side down here, you're not supposed to tighten it up until you get the car back down on the ground and the suspension's all compressed and stuff. So I got the spring back in, I got the shock back in, so we're just gotta take that other upper control arm out now. Okay, so I got the upper out. I think, so these look pretty beat up. This is the passenger side upper. But take a look at this. Oh yeah, look at that. That's probably what's causing my problem, wouldn't you say? Okay, so I'm gonna be pressing these bushing shells out. Not only replacing the bushings, but the whole shell as well. So what I'm gonna do is, can't really show you, but I got some sandpaper here. I'm gonna scuff up the other side so I can push it out this way. I have the Maximum Motorsport tool, so hopefully it's gonna be pretty easy going. And then we'll press the new ones in. And all right, so the way this works is you got this big portion here, which is gonna go over the whole shell. And then you got this this back section that will push everything out. Then you get washers and stuff with the kit. But essentially you just tighten the bolt up and it'll just press it out just using this grade 8 bolt. Anyway, hopefully it lasts. We'll see. So, yeah, broke the bolt. Even I had all this lube on there and everything, but this thing's a little bit stubborn. So I'll go buy some new hardware and we'll try it again. Alright guys, you can see all these broken bolts here. Well, I kept breaking them, they just kept torquing it and torquing it and torquing it, and then didn't really realize why I kept breaking. So I went in with the air chisel, tried to chisel out, didn't really work, didn't do much. And then I looked on the back side here, and it looked like this machine washer that Maximum Motorsports gives you with the tool was just a hair undersized, and it was going in crooked, and then that caused this side to bulge out. So no matter what I tried pulling, it wouldn't come out. So as soon as I took the air chisel to this thing and bent it in, flattened all the corners, she came right out. All right, so there's the hole. We're gonna go ahead and clean that up with some sandpaper, and then like I said, the bushings, the new ones, they're in the freezer right now, so it should be nice and cold and small, right? So they can push right in. And then we're gonna heat this outside surface up. There's I measured it, it's about 0.5 millimeter of interference between the two, so. All right, I just noticed something when I was cleaning this thing up. Right down here, there's a little burr at the back, and you could definitely feel that with your finger. It's definitely protruding. There's even one, looks like at the top right up here. So I'm gonna take a quick little file. I'm gonna file those down, and then we think we'll be able to press the new one in. Alright guys, here's the new one. It was in the freezer for a couple days here. So we're gonna lube this up. You can see it's a little frosty. Alright, so yeah, the GoPro died, so I just went ahead and installed the bushing there, but so there it is. The Maximum Motorsport tool is actually really handy. I wish I wouldn't have broke the bolt, because I had to make a little extension here, but that's not a big deal. You just essentially you tighten this down. Hold on. You tighten this down until the back of the bushing sits right inside that cup, and that's how you know you went far enough. So we're just gonna go ahead and put the upper control arm, and then we'll jump onto the other side.
MG Motorsports Tech Tip. Don't forget to lube your shaft.
Alright guys, we got the control arm in. I'll just show you something here. So there's the bushing, and there's the nut on the other side of the bushing. So one thing I'm not too excited about is you don't see any threads sticking out there, right? So let me just show you something. So when you compare these two control arms, right? So this is the new tubular one with the poly bushings. They got these like washers here, right? Whereas the OEM one doesn't. So essentially, what I found was that, you know, the inside dimension is still the same, but the outside dimension is now spaced out a little further. So your bolt doesn't actually engage the whole nut. So I think I might need to get a longer bolt for the two upper axle control arms, but for now we'll be able to take it for a test drive just to check it out. But I torqued them down pretty good, so hopefully they last test drive. So I think what we'll do on this side, we'll start with the hard one, the upper control arm, and because it looked like last time this lower control arm was a little bit easier. So start with the hard one and end with the gravy. The first bolt is being a bit of a bitch. Alright, so here's a quick look at the bushings and the upper control arm. Pretty worn out. And then here is the axle bushing. I think it was a good time to change them. You got to get this bolt off. Actually, it's not even a bolt, it's just a nut on like a stud on this bracket that holds your fuel line up there. You need to get this off so that you can get a ratchet on the other side of this bushing. Problem is this is seized now, so I'm gonna have to take a grinder to it and probably cut it off. That's not gonna be any fun at all. Okay, so instead of breaking the Maximum Motorsport tool a bunch of times, what I did is I'm gonna try just taking the bushing part out of the shell first, and then pressing the actual shell out by itself. I'm hoping this way I can heat the inside of the shell, and it'll come out a lot easier, because you know, originally, you know, you got a lot of axle steel there, right? So it takes a long time to heat that up. So we'll try this, because it just won't come again. Okay, so I think it started to work, but now the shell is folding in. So I'm gonna have to just use my my air chisel just to fold the shell in, and hopefully be able to pull it out. I don't know, this is stupid. All right, it only took me an hour instead of like 5 for the other side. So yeah, no broken bolts this time, but it was a bitch. So you take an air chisel, you kind of round out the backside here, and then it came, I guess, but man, that was a bitch. Anyway, so I just gotta clean the hole out. Looks like I broke a brake line. Gonna have to fix that. Okay, we got her installed. Everything looks pretty good. And what I noticed up here was that that nut, or that junction, whatever, was just loose. So I tightened it up, and it looks like I probably fixed a leak. So I didn't break the line, thankfully. Anyway, got to put this thing back in, then we'll be able to torque it down, and then we'll put the new control arm in. Alright guys, we got the control arm in. It's all good to go. Took the shock out, it's right here. And I'll tell you, this one is done ski. There's absolutely no pressure left in it. So, yeah. Okay, just to give you an idea of what this should look like, I'm gonna cut this, and then you can watch it. Oh. All right, end with the gravy, I said, eh? Well, this sure is gravy. The control arm bolt is seized to the bushing collar, the inside collar. So I have to cut the head off of this, and now I'm trying to just bash it through, so that's gonna be great. And I haven't even tried the front one, so fantastic. All right guys, I got it out. This thing was a disaster. So the big thing here is that that bolt there is seized in the inside collar, and had to cut it off with a grinder, cut the head off, and then just keep working it until I broke it, and finally got it out. But man, was I getting pissed. So now I'll need a new bolt, which sucks. But anyway, everything's out now. Alright guys, I got lucky. I picked some bolts up from work. This is the original. You see it's pretty much the same length and the same thread pitch. So the shorter one, like this one here, and that one, I'm going to use on the upper axle, because those were a little short, if you remember. And then these nice ones here will both go on the lower control arms at the axle. Alright, so we got the bolts in. The upper control arms, we got the bottom one here swapped out, and now the only thing left to do is put the sway bar back in. So it comes with these like spring nut things here. What we're gonna do is we're just gonna take a screwdriver, pop these out, and then put them in there, and I think we'll be good to go. Okay, she's all back together. There she is. Sway bars in. I ended up just using new nuts instead of these things. They look pretty chintzy, so I just used some new nuts on that backside with the lock washer. You're good to go. Okay, so now that we're all done, you gotta put the wheels back on, get the suspension to compress, you know, let the tires take the weight, and then we just gotta come back under here and torque that bolt to the torque spec. Alright, there she is. I'll put her down on blocks, all 4 corners. Tightened up the lower control arm bolt. Now she's good to go. Stay tuned for next week when we install some Maximum Motorsports subframe connectors.